What is up? What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday morning. Welcome back and welcome into a series preview as the Mariners get ready to head out east to take on the Baltimore Orioles, the start of a massive 10-game road trip for the Mariners. I will also be doing the Q&A. Thank you all for the questions in the community tab, so I'll go ahead and answer those as well. So I'll keep the series preview pretty quick. I can keep it really quick for you. Baltimore is really good. They can pitch and they can hit, so it's going to take a lot for the Mariners to win this series. Listen, it's going to be a tough 10-game trip. You got 3 in Baltimore, 4 in New York against the Yankees, and 3 in D.C. against the Nationals team that is much improved over last season. So listen, if you can come out of this trip 5-5, I would absolutely take that right now. If you could present that to me, the Mariners come home 29-24, that's great. And I know, and again, I say these things, I know people go like, wow, Jay's just fine with 500. Not at all. I'm fine with 500 when you're playing Baltimore, New York. I hope you could beat the Nationals. Still think the Mariners are better than the Nationals. But, you win 2 out of 3 there, split with the Yankees, and maybe you lose the Baltimore series. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but that's fine. When you get into June, the schedule opens up a little bit. You see the White Sox, the Angels. I think you have Oakland again in there. So you break in with the good teams and you beat up on the bad ones. I would have no problem the Seattle Mariners come home 5-5. I hope for more. I hope they go 10-0. That would be amazing. Sign me up. I'll do that. But initially, I think 5-5 would be just fine. Let's take a look at the Orioles real quick. Now I'll get into the Q&A. Offensively, they're 5th in baseball with a 114 WRC plus. For comparison, the Mariners sit at 16th in baseball with a 99 WRC plus. Mariners are slowly creeping into the average, an average offense here. So they have been playing better ball, the Mariners, offensively as of late. So hopefully, Baltimore, I'm assuming it's still a hitter's park. I know they moved left field back, but Yankee Stadium is for sure. So hopefully they can get that WRC plus well over 100 after this road trip would be great. Boy, the Orioles offense can hit. I mean, you've got all these guys I'm about to list off have well above average WRC pluses. Jordan Westburg, 156. Ryan O'Hearn, talk about kind of a career revival for Ryan O'Hearn. Struggled in Kansas City, comes over to Baltimore, and he's doing it again. 152 WRC plus. Gunnar Henderson, 149. Adley Rushman, 146. Colton Cowser, 136. Ryan Mountcastle, 125. Anthony Santander, a Mariners killer, at 114. The only guy not really hitting for them is Cedric Mullins with the 67 WRC plus, but he's been a Mariner killer as well. So I don't think he's someone that's going to stay down for long either. So this offense is loaded. You're going to have Bryce Miller, Luis Castillo, and George Kirby going in this series. They will have to be on their game. I always expect them to be. So I will always give the Mariners, a chance. Always have a chance to shut down any lineup when you have pitching that the Mariners have. But it will be a huge test for them this series against that Baltimore Orioles lineup. Pitching wise, none of the 3, all 3 that I saw on MLB.com were to be determined. From what I read, it sounds like John Means and Cole Irvin will pitch in this series, from what I could kind of look up. So take it with a grain of salt. But that'll be 2 left-handed pitchers. So you'll definitely see Mitch Haniger. You might see Canzone and Raley get a day off. Dylan Moore in the outfield. We'll see if J.P. Crawford is activated. J.P. obviously left last night's game in Tacoma, was hit on his hand. Sounds like the Mariners are not worried about it at all, but it could push him back a couple days. If he does end up being activated, I'm assuming we'll see Dylan Moore in the outfield with Mitch Haniger and Julio, some Luis Urias at third. It'd be nice to see Josh Rojas get at least one of those starts against a lefty. We'll see what they end up doing. If JP is out, then I'm assuming you'll see Dylan Moore at shortstop and one of Canzone or Raley probably play the outfield. Or you're going to have Rojas at second, Urias at third. And for the Mariners, is Jorge Polanco going to be back? Is Mitch Garver going to be back from their minor injury? So kind of a lot of question marks with what the Mariners will roll out lineup-wise against the Orioles. John Means has not really pitched a full season. In fact, I don't know why I said not really. He literally has not pitched a full season since 2021. I believe that was the year. Didn't he no-hit the Mariners? And wasn't the only reason he didn't have a perfect game was a strikeout that someone reached on or something. Something like that. So Means is a solid pitcher. In 2021, he had a 3.62 ERA and a 4.62 FIP. The FIP's a little high, but Means to me is kind of like the lefty guys like that are more, I don't want to say junk ballers, but more breaking stuff, off-speed stuff, not going to blow you down. The Jamie Moyers, I'm not comparing Means to Moyer necessarily, but those guys are always going to run FIPS just a little bit higher and probably going to outperform them a little bit. So I wouldn't put a ton of stock into Means' FIP necessarily. So far in 2024, 3.05 ERA, 11 strikeouts, no walks in 2 starts, which is about 11 and 2/3 innings for Means. Means is solid. He is a solid pitcher if he's healthy. That's going to be the key for John Means, is just his ability to stay on the field. If he can, he's a good pitcher. The Orioles pitching staff in general is 7th in FIP in baseball at 3.66. The Mariners do have them beat. The Mariners are 4th at 3.43. But you're not just getting production from the lineup and no pitching. The Orioles truly can do it all. Cole Irvin is expected, I believe, to make the other start. I'm not sure what days who's going where. 2.90 ERA, 3.36 FIP, 40 innings pitched, 28 Ks, 8 walks. Irvin did shut down the Mariners last year. He was the opposing pitcher in that George Kirby game, where the Mariners honored Felix Hernandez that night by having a starter pitch a dominant start, not getting him any run support. So Felix felt right at home during that start. You may remember Cole Irvin. He's the one that made the comment, I think in 2021, that I forgot, I'm going to miss the quote a little bit, but they asked him about shutting down the Mariners lineup, and he was essentially just said, that's not a lineup that you should be giving up a lot of runs to. Probably overblown a little bit. I don't think he meant it super insulting, but the Mariners absolutely blasted Cole Irvin like all 3 or 4 starts he had against the Mariners in 2021. So that was cool to see, but he'll be on the mound as well. And I'm not sure who is starting Game 3 for the Orioles. Listen, I think you can hit Means and Irvin. You can hit any pitcher, but they're certainly capable starting pitchers that could also shut down this lineup. So hopefully the right-handed bats, the Mitch Hanigers, the Julios, Luis Urias, hopefully you get Mitch Garver in there. I think having his bat in there against these lefties would be huge. And then we'll see what happens with J.P. Crawford and if he is activated or not. Hopefully he is back in the lineup as well. Orioles also have a pretty lights out bullpen. All these guys I'm going to name have FIPS in the 3s. Jacob Webb, Danny Colombe. I always mess up that name. Aiken, Craig Kimbrell's down there. Yainer Cano has a FIP of 4.58, but his ERA is in the 2s. And he is a lights out reliever, so I'm assuming that FIP is going to come down a little bit as the year goes along. Obviously, they're missing Felix Bautista. They still have Dylan Tate as well in the bullpen. Obviously, they're missing Felix Bautista for the season, which is a shame because, man, he was like a dark horse Cy Young guy last year. But they have more than capable relievers to get you out. I do think you can maybe hit the pitching staff a little bit. I think it's really good. And of course, I'm coming again from the Mariners, who have, I think, again, the best pitching staff in baseball. So I do think the bats could get something going against the Orioles Stars. It's not claiming they're going to, put up 10 runs or anything like that, but I do think they're capable. I do think you can get to Means and Cole Irvin. And hopefully that Bryce Miller and Castillo and Kirby are on their games, because they're going to have to be to hold this lineup in check. A series win would be amazing. If you can go to Baltimore and get 2 out of 3, that would feel really good. It's a team you could very easily see in the playoffs if you get there. So, a great test for the Mariners here to see how they line up against, you could make a case the best team in the American League. I think you could absolutely make that case that Baltimore, I think you could more than make that case, and you could just straight up say it and you might be correct. So just tremendous homegrown young talent in Baltimore. Obviously they had to send Jackson Holiday back down. He struggled, but man, they are loaded. They are absolutely loaded. They had some down years there, but they really rebuilt that farm system. Brandon Hyde's done a nice job. Their front office done a nice job. I know they've got new ownership now, so maybe they're going to spend a little bit more money, which is really scary to go along with that lineup, that pitching staff, to think that they could also, get in some of the big name free agents. I don't think the road to the World Series possibly goes through Baltimore. Can their pitching hold up? That's going to be the key for them. Can their starting pitching hold up? It's been really good, but will it hold up, long enough for them to make a World Series run? So that's the preview. Listen, I predict something. I would love 2 out of 3. If you could somehow take 2 out of 3 in this series, absolutely sign me up. I wouldn't be devastated if the Mariners only won 1. I remember last year, funny enough, the Mariners won both series openers against Baltimore. Actually blew them out in both games, then lost 2 close games when they were in Baltimore and in Seattle. They actually outscored the Orioles last year in the 6 games, but just couldn't get the win. So hopefully this year, maybe that trend, maybe they buck that a little bit and they win the series. So we'll see. It is going to be a really tough test and a tough road trip, but Mariners got the pitching to do it. So we'll see. Let's get into the Q&A a little bit here. Got a bunch of questions from you guys. So let's just dive in. I'll give you all a shout out and then let's dive into it. Let's start with Noob Pills. If I'm saying anything wrong, guys, with a name, just let me know. He says last night, Dylan, this was the game 2 of the Royals series he's talking about. Last night, Dylan Moore had a 3-0 count at the bottom of the 7th and Haniger on first base. Seattle down 2. I think they were down 3, actually. I think it was 4-1. The following pitch looked like something he really could have swung at, but apparently baseball etiquette is to never sing 3-0. He takes them, proceeds to get out a double play on the next pitch. I guess my question is, do you think he held back the swing due to formality? Had that been a home run, it would have tied the game. Should you still be courteous even down 2 runs? I think it was a 3-run game when that happened, to be honest. I think it was 4-1. Actually, you know what? No, it might have been. Let me pull that up. I know that's not what, but because it's going to change my answer a little bit. That's why I want to make sure I have it right. This isn't a gotcha because, it changes it down 2 versus down 3. I remember the at-bat you're talking about for sure with Demo. Because I remember even saying on Twitter, like, 3-0 and then a double play. So let me pull it up. Bottom 7. So let's see. Yeah, it was 3-1. Listen, it's so that the taking 3-0 isn't necessarily an etiquette thing. So it was 3-1. You're correct. I apologize on that. It's not really an etiquette thing. It's not like an unwritten rule that you can't swing 3-0. Nobody would have thrown a pitch at Dylan Moore if he swung 3-0 and hit a home run. The thought behind taking a 3-0 pitch is you're ahead 3-0 in the count, and you just don't want to make an out on a 3-0 pitch. Plenty of guys do get green lighted 3-0. We've seen Julio green light. We've seen Cal Raleigh green lighted. Dylan Moore has enough pop that I wouldn't be against it, but you're looking for base runners there. Obviously, like you said, you hit a 2-run home run, you tie it. I don't know if Dylan Moore had the green light there to swing. I think for the most part, especially in modern baseball, I think most guys kind of do. I mean, I'm probably not giving Sebi Zavala a 3-0 green light, but I think if Dylan's got one, he thinks he can drive, he has the green light. But it's not really an etiquette thing. It's not like a not stealing a base when you're up 10-0 because it's rubbing it in. It's not an etiquette thing as much. It's just more of a tactical thing of being ahead 3-0 in a count, taking the pitch because the pitcher's got to come back with 3 strikes in a row. So if you take one, you're still ahead in the count 3-1. You're still in the driver's seat in the at-bats. So that's why most guys take 3-0 in those situations. So listen, if Dylan had a pitch to hit 3-0, I wouldn't have been against it. Frustrating that he also then ground into a double play on a 3-1 pitch. So I don't know if Dylan's got the green light. I don't know if he's quite a hitter that you're giving a green light to 3-0. But yeah, it's not necessarily, like I said, it's not really an etiquette thing. It's just more of a tactical stance by teams to take 3-0. Appreciate the question, my friend. Next one comes from my man, Aaron. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Should the M's acquire a hitter named Riley, first or last name, so they could go Raleigh, Rayleigh, Riley to Rally? Just a fun one today. It's still early. I appreciate that, my friend. Aaron, thank you always for all your comments on my videos. I think I sent the last one, but you always bring some interesting stuff that I've actually kind of gone, maybe I should change my thought on that a little bit. And I always appreciate your grounded takes. I think we kind of look at things the same way. In that instance, we don't let the highs get too high and the lows get too low. Sure, get me a Riley. Maybe Austin Riley. No, I don't think the Braves are trading him, but and then bat them all back to back. That would be fun for sure. But hope you're doing well, my friend. Crispy Boy asks, when JP comes back in the lineup, who are you taking out? Dylan Moore. Dylan Moore will go back into his super utility role. You could possibly run 2 platoons in the outfield. You could do like Rayleigh and Haniger in right and Canzone and Dylan Moore in left field. But Dylan will go back to, he'll still get a lot of at-bats. In fact, if JP comes back tomorrow and Polanco's not ready, Dylan Moore might play second base, especially against a left-handed hitter. So you'll still see Demo in the lineups, especially against lefties. He'll do some pinch running and some pinch hitting and stuff like that. But Dylan's pretty much been playing shortstop every day. They'll get him back into sort of his Mark McLemore role, I guess I would call it, for Dylan Moore. But yeah, that's what'll happen there. Appreciate the question. Katie, I believe it's with the, I hope I'm saying that correctly, asks, what are the odds that Dipoto adds a late season Munoz trade to his Graveman Seawald disasters? I will actually, the odds of them trading Munoz is zero. Munoz won't be traded. Their bullpen just doesn't have enough depth to survive a Munoz trade, even if it was for, I mean, I guess if you could trade Andres Munoz for, prime Mike Trout, sure, I'll do that. But, that's obviously not going to happen. So, no, they won't trade Munoz. I will counter. I don't think those trades were disasters. I think the Mariners, listen, I think the D-backs and Mariners both got what they needed out of the Seawald deal. Don't forget, we got Josh Rojas on that deal and how good he was last year taking over for Colton Wong. Yeah, there were games Mariners missed Seawald on the back end, but you would have not gotten that production out of second base you got for Rojas. And everyday players are usually more valuable than relievers. I think the thought behind the Graveman trade made sense. You're trying to acquire, again, kind of the same thing they did with the Seawald trade, right? Just they did it with Abraham Toro. And, and they did, they added Diego Castillo. They added Joe Smith, who did a nice job that year for them. The thought process behind it makes sense. I can certainly understand, though, it doesn't go over well in the clubhouse. Graveman was well liked. Seawald was well liked. So that has to be taken into account too. Production matters, but you also want good vibes in the clubhouse. Although I will say after the Seawald trade, I think they went like 10-1. So, but to answer the initial question, no, I would put about a 0% chance that they trade Andres Munoz. Appreciate the question and the support as always. Daniel Weiss asks thoughts on moving Cal to first base when Harry Ford is ready to start playing with the big league club. I've thought about this to save Cal from getting run down. Yeah, I think eventually it's something, we saw it with Joe Mauer. We saw it with Buster Posey, guys that just had to move a little bit because, your body can only catch for so long. Harry Ford could still be a trade piece as well. I don't think there's necessarily a guarantee that Harry Ford, ends up breaking through with the Mariners. He could be used at the trade deadline or in the offseason. He could change positions at some point as well with Cal Raleigh there. I don't really know what a date would be for that. That's just going to be how Cal handles it and how long he's able to catch for. I would think you have at least another solid handful of years. Let me put it this way. By the time Harry Ford is ready, Cal will still be behind the dish. And I'm not moving Cal just because Harry Ford is ready. Cal's the proven player, and he will stick behind the plate. So it's either going to have to be Ford switching positions or a trade. Now, if Ford switches positions and still does a little bit of catching and then Cal, has to switch later in his career, that could work. But initially my question would be, no, Cal will stick behind the dish and Ford's going to either have to find another position or, be a trade piece or something like that. Appreciate the question, my friend, as always. Ethan Higgins asks, what comes first, the Seattle Mariners winning a World Series or the second coming of Jesus? All right, I'll try not to get too philosophical on it. I'm actually going to say the second coming, and here's why. That could happen at any day. I'm not trying to get into anything here. This is just for fun, but that could happen tomorrow. The Mariners can't win the World Series. Even if they do win it, that can't happen till October. So Jesus could come back anytime, any minute. He can come back right now. I didn't see him, but he could. The Mariners can't win the World Series till October. If they don't win it, they have to wait another year. So logically, the odds would favor Jesus because he has more opportunities to come back. Hopefully that answers the question, but I appreciate it, my friend. Sean, what's up, my friend? Hope you are doing well. Always appreciate all your comments on my videos and all your support. He asks, what trade additions do you think the Mariners should go for this season, given the team's current status, and who should they be willing to give up in order to get these players? Appreciate the question. I am not good with trade proposals. Now, I'll give you some names, but I'm just not good at this package will get you this. It's just not my area of expertise. Now, I will say reliever. I've mentioned Austin Adams. I don't think he would cost you too much. I think you could give away whoever's the Mariners' 26th ranked prospect plus some other minor leaguer, and you could probably have Austin Adams on your roster very quickly. So I would definitely add bullpen depth. Outfield depth would be nice too. Tommy Pham's hitting well with the White Sox. That could be someone you look at. I know they talked about Locked On Mariners today. Jeff Passan mentioned Luis Robert as the Mariners do have the firepower to go get him, which is true. The Mariners farm system is great. I mean, Cole Emerson, Cole Young, Luzardo Montes, selling Falesti. I can't talk. Harry Ford, Johnny Farmello. It's a loaded farm system. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone in there as well. Why do I feel like I'm forgetting a big name? Ty Pete, Emerson Hancock still has some trade value. I will reiterate what Locked On said, though, about going for a big bat like Luis Robert. Listen, it's exciting. If the Mariners acquired Luis Robert tomorrow, I'd be really, really pumped up about that. But he's a guy that just can't stay healthy. He's played one full major league season. He hasn't played this year since early April. There is a big risk going to get a big bat like that. Now, if you could guarantee me, now I know you can't guarantee anything with any player. If you could guarantee me Luis Roberts playing 130 to 140 games, you can have all the prospects on a silver platter to the Chicago White Sox. You can take them. Fine, whatever. We'll rebuild the farm system. Get me Luis Robert. However, again, Robert just has not been a picture of health. So I'm a little hesitant there. And a lot of his value too is he's a great defensive center fielder. And I'm repeating pretty much everything that Colby and Ty talked about on Locked On. Not trying to steal content, but everything they said was spot on. So I agree. So I'm going to reiterate those points that both of them made. He's not going to play center field in Seattle. He's going to have to play left or right. You can still have a lot of value as a great defensive corner outfielder, but the value is not quite there as a great defensive center fielder. So you lose a little value there, and you're not going to get it cheaper because of that, like Ty and Colby said, because the White Sox don't care. They're going to be like, well, to us, he's an elite center fielder. And they are going to want the farm for Luis Robert. And he's just a name to keep an eye on. I would be super excited. He is a tremendous player. He's under club control. He's still young. So I'm not saying it would be awful or anything, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but there are some red flags with Luis Robert that you have to be careful of. And, if he's playing 80, 90 games, like Colby said, you're not going to get that value in return for him. And you've got a roster that's already dealing with guys that have trouble staying on the field. Polanco, Garver, Haniger. So, fans get frustrated with those guys. Now, Robert's a more talented player, you know what I mean, and younger, but the frustrations are going to be there. So I didn't mean to hijack that comment, turn it into a rant on Luis Robert, but I was watching Locked On today. I thought they made some good points there. I think most likely, like I said, I think you're going to see a bullpen arm added. I think a corner outfielder makes some sense for this team. Like I said, Tommy Pham, a Mark Canha type. I don't know if the Tigers are going to trade Canha. Michael Conforto. I wonder if Yastrzemski would be available if the Giants drop out as well. Trying to think who else might be out there. Lamont Wade Jr. I'm going all Giants here for some reason, but that's a team that's got some decent players that is just in a loaded division and could drop off a little bit. Brent Rooker, if you want to do something where you get Austin Adams and Brent Rooker in a package for the A's, that would be interesting. I think that's the route you'll see the team go more so. I'm sure they'd love to add Luis Robert, but it's going to cost a lot. And he's like I say, he's not a vision house. Not all those guys I mentioned are either, but they're not going to cost you what Robert's going to cost you. And I'm also not saying I'm against trading for Luis Robert. You can make that work. And trust me, I'd be super pumped about it. But there is some legitimate risk there as well. So appreciate the question, Sean. Thank you. Hope that answers it. Trevor2133 asks, I was pretty young for most of the bad Mariners years beyond the early 2000s. Lucky man. No, I was kidding. Do you recall the fan base being as upset with the ownership back then as they are now? To be, to be honest, I don't, but I didn't pay as much attention to that stuff. I know you had Howard Lincoln and who was the other one? Chuck Armstrong. Yeah, I remember fans not really liking those guys either and that ownership group, and stuff like that. I think they spent a little bit more actually than the current. I don't know. I mean, the payroll is obviously less because, inflation and stuff like that, players just weren't making what they make today. Yeah, I remember there being some frustrations, but you didn't have all the social media stuff back then, so it wasn't as noticeable. I mean, there was social media in the mid 2000s and blogs and websites, but you didn't quite get that instant take that you get today with Twitter and everything like that, or people like me doing YouTube videos. So I think it was there. I don't know to the extent necessarily, but Yeah, I remember people not liking that ownership group much either. So, and I think they're still involved. That's another where I know John Stanton. I know he's just part of an ownership group, so I know there's more that goes into it than just John Stanton as well. Um, but yeah, I think fans were still pretty frustrated, if I remember correctly. Appreciate the question, my friend. Um, I can't Croco DMNG. I'm butchering that, but appreciate the question. He asked, or she, I should say he or she, I'm not sure on some of you. So I apologize if I said he when it's not, but he asks, how do you weigh Emerson Hancock's value as a potential trade piece at the deadline versus a backup starter who can fill in for injury like he did with Wu? If Hancock is dealt at the deadline, who fills that role as needed? That's a really good question. Because you do kind of need 6 starters. You always do. And the Mariners, Brian Wu has not been a vision of health in his career. Bryce Miller, we saw last year, wore down a bit at the end of the year. Fingers crossed that Gilbert, Castillo, and Kirby all stay healthy. Very fortunate if they do, but baseball's not always like that. I'm, of course, be willing to deal Emerson Hancock for the right deal that brings you back a piece that can help you win now and is going to be more valuable than Hancock would be to you as a 6 starter. I mean, you could do kind of something where you trade him and then acquire another guy. I know they didn't use him as a star, but like kind of how they got Matthew Boyd in 2022. So you could do something like that where, you trade Hancock. He has some value. You get a piece back and you go out and get another star that you can stick, in Tacoma or in the bullpen as kind of a swing man a little bit and someone that can make starts if needed. Your Rich Hill type guys. I think Rich Hill might have retired, but you know the type of names I'm talking about. You could do something like that. You could rely on Dallas Keuchel. I don't think I'm willing to do that. But I'm also not just going to keep Emerson Hancock if I think there's a move that can make the team better right now. So we'll see what ends up happening there. He definitely still has value, even though he's not on the major league roster, still has value to them in that 6 starter role. If we get closer to the deadline and everyone's staying healthy, again, I'm all for it if you can improve the current roster. It's just something the Mariners are going to have to deal with. And if someone goes down, like I said, you could maybe acquire somebody else, or you've got to rely on a Dallas Keuchel to get you through it. Not ideal, but if Emerson Hancock can net you someone that's helping carry this lineup, then, you can stomach it a little bit. So that would be my take on that. Appreciate the question. Unit, that one I can read easily, 557. He says, MLB Central host were trying to say the Phillies rotation was better than the M's. Is that blasphemy? Phillies rotation's pretty good. Let's pull up if that's blasphemy or not. I can't pull it up on my screen, but let's go to Fangraphs and see, not that FIP is everything, but let's look at FIP. And this is just all pitchers. The Phillies do lead baseball in FIP at 3.27. So that's pretty darn good. Let's see their rotation. Zach Wheeler, 2.53 ERA, 2.72 FIP. Aaron Nola, 3.10 ERA, 3.56 FIP. Ranger Suarez has broken out this year, 1.37 ERA, 2.69 FIP. Christopher Sanchez has a 2.85 FIP and 3.43 ERA. Taijuan Walker's only made 3 starts. Spencer Turnbull has made 6 starts. He's got a 2.11 ERA, 3.66 FIP. Whew, that's pretty loaded. That's a pretty solid rotation. They're outperforming the Mariners actually so far. I'll put the Mariners staff up against anybody, but I won't say it's blasphemy. Will I take the Mariners rotation? Yes. I'll still take the Mariners rotation. Again, I'll take it over anybody, but I don't think it's blasphemy. That's a pretty solid rotation there for the Philadelphia Phillies. Thank you for the question. You'd appreciate it. Tom Young asks, why not keep Emerson Hancock up as a long reliever? He's usually good for one rotation through the order. The reps will be good for his development, and there's a spot open with Saucedo down. So here's the thing with that. I actually don't think it's crazy that long-term Hancock could profile better in the bullpen. You get max effort out of your pitches. We know he can throw hard. And like I said, kind of in short stints, he may work out better. But that would be something I'd look at more in the offseason. And if you want to do that, you've got to transition him to that. Even with Matt Brash, remember, they still sent him down and had him kind of transition into a reliever's role. And the other thing I would say is you need that 6 starter. You can't assume Brian Wu is going to make all his starts. Again, Bryce Miller last year wore down a little bit. If the Mariners get into position in August, September where they look pretty comfortable, in a division lead, just hypothetically, I'm saying, I'm not predicting, you could go to a 6-man rotation for a little bit to give guys just a little bit of a break before the playoffs, possibly. So I think right now Emerson Hancock has more value as a starter to the Mariners. So I would still keep him in the rotation. And, if you're willing to trade him, you want him as a starter because he's going to have more value as a starter, at least initially. Now, again, Matt Brash probably now has more value as a reliever than he did as a starter, but starters tend to get more and net you more. So if you can have Hancock be a solid starter, you'll get a better return in a trade package if you decide to go that route. I think long-term, that could be an option, 100%. But short-term, I think it's better that Hancock stays as a starting pitcher in the rotation. And last question. Actually, there's a couple more in the post game I want to get to. But Chief Urton, God, I'm so bad with names on here. I'm never sure, because it's all together if it's where the name breaks. But yes, who's my favorite Mariner of all time? Edgar Martinez is my favorite Mariner of all time. Jay Buhner up there as well. Obviously love Griffey, Felix Hernandez, Ichiro, but Edgar Martinez, just because of the double. That was kind of my first when I fell in love with baseball. So Edgar is my favorite Mariner of all time. Let me get to a couple questions I think I saw in the post-game show yesterday that I want to get to. I don't know if these were meant for this, but I'll answer them anyways. Andrew Nguyen asks, what do you think of the Seahawks schedule? A little Seahawks talk. I've been meaning to make more Seahawks videos, guys. I'm so sorry. Just baseball season has been so Mariners centric. I like the Seahawks schedule. I think it's a very winnable schedule. I think they can get 10 wins. I don't know what we're going to see out of the Seahawks this year. I'm kind of being patient with it. New coaching staff. It's going to take Mike McDonald some time to get his guys in there that he wants to, get his philosophies implemented and everything like that. So, it could take some time, or they could hit the ground running and be really solid. Maybe the issue last year was just Pete and Clint Hurt couldn't run the defense to save their lives. McDonald comes in, and this is a top 15 defense with a pretty solid offense, and they win 10, 11 games. I could also see them kind of being 8, 9 wins. I really don't know what we're going to see out of the Seahawks team, but I'm excited for it because I feel like there's not a lot of pressure. It's just going to be kind of interesting to see what direction this team goes with a new coaching staff. I mean, it's been since last time we saw a coach that wasn't Pete Carroll was 2009 with Jim Mora. Last time Pete Carroll wasn't on the sidelines for this team. And even before that, you had Holmgren here for such a long time. But in terms of, I know you were asking about the schedule. I like that you start out with Denver, New England. I think both very winnable, especially early in the year when you might be facing rookies making their first starts, which will be tough, or you're going to face aging veterans. I guess Zach Wilson wouldn't be an aging veteran, but he's not good. Jacoby Brissett's solid, but beatable. I don't know if it's going to be him or Drake May in New England. So I like the start. A lot of home games, especially early on. Your last 2 are on the road. I think it's a schedule they can do some damage with. We'll see. We'll see. And then Don Deasy asks, do you think Miller and Wu would be moved to the bullpen in the playoffs? One of them will probably stick in the rotation. Usually you want to have 4 just in case, you've got some back-to-backs there, or you're up, in the series 3-0 and you want to, not pitch Castillo, Gilbert, or Kirby on short rest. But yes, I would assume one of them in the bullpen. I actually feel like Brian Wu might profile better in a bullpen role because he's got that 2-seamer that's just going to eat righties up. And I could see him just dominating right-handed hitters out of the bullpen. So if you get to the playoffs, I think Wu probably would be a bullpen guy. Kind of your almost, remember when the Astros had Chris Davinsky and he would come in and do 2 innings at a time and really dominate? I could see Wu doing something like that in the postseason. So to answer your question, I think Wu would be the guy that would profile better to that. Or what you could do is you could have Miller start and Wu kind of piggyback off of him. And we'll get to that issue when it comes up. But yeah, those would be the answers. My answer to those questions. Have a great night. Well, great morning because this will be up Friday morning. And I will see you all tonight for the post-game recap. Take care, everybody, and go Mariners. Peace.